Now, the prong against Britain, the main weapon against Britain, is the European Union collective, and the weapon against the United States is the penetration of the CIA and its affiliates with the German Himmler scientists and intelligence officers who were brought over after the denazification program was scrapped in 1946. And if you look up Operation Paperclip, that was the first major transfer of Nazis into the United States. So about 700 families went on under Operation Paperclip, but it went on and on and on right the way to the beginning of the 50s. So what happened was that the US intelligence power was taken over to some extent, or to a considerable extent, by a German Nazi fifth column who have been running the show ever since. Now, Kissinger is, I believe, the key to this, and he was instrumental in persuading President Ford to dismiss William Colby as DCI, the Director of Intelligence, in favor of George H.W. Bush. Now, George Bush is the representative in the United States of Deutsche Verteidigungsdienst, which is the German black agency based, believe it or not, in Dachau. And we call it DVD. I exposed DVD. It's nothing to be proud about because we've known about it for years. But I publicized it, and I know for a fact that certain intelligence officers from DVD have actually congratulated elements of MI6 on this exposure, because they think I'm MI6, which is, of course, complete rubbish. Anyway, the point is this, that the the operation against the United States has been run by DVD in Dachau, behind the scenes, and the same applies to the operation against the United Kingdom. Now, the DVD is self-financing, like the CIA, through fraudulent finance, and it advises the German Chancellor about its activities, but the German Chancellor can't tell it what to do, quote unquote. The DVD is running our lives and is the enemy within the enemy, okay? Now, given that the German Geopolitical Center set out the program, how do we know that this is the case? We know it from a document called which has been called the Madrid Circular Letter, which was intercepted in about, I think it was 1951, by the Allies. This was a document being sent to the other Nazi centers in Buenos Aires, Cairo, Tehran, I think, and various other places, Tokyo, from Madrid by the German Geopolitical Center. And this document contains the following slogan: Für uns ist der Krieg niemals vorbei. For us, the war never ended. Now, one of my correspondents, Jack Christella, who is he's British, but he's of German Jewish extraction, emailed me a very, very intelligent analysis and said that he thought that what they really meant was Für uns ist der Krieg nimmer vorbei. For us, the war never ended. I think that's true. I think that's correct. I think that's what they actually mean. In other words, they are Trotskyites. They are Mao Zedong, perpetual war advocates. Now, so we have the problem that we're dealing actually not just, I mean, I've called the European Union our enemy, European Union collective, but within the collective is, of course, Germany, and that's the problem. Now, if I had time, I would have told you what I wanted to tell you, which is I wanted to proceed what I was going to say with a little scripture lesson. But I'll skip most of it, and I'll just read verse 1 of Psalm 127. Except the Lord build the house, they labor in vain that build it. That's the point. Where is the Lord to be seen in this structure? It is totally aspiritual. It has no spiritual content at all. Excuse me, I'm a father of 4 daughters. We know that it's not just a question of our physical existence, we have a spirit as well. This entity is not connected at all to our spiritual existence because it is of Satan. And I'm absolutely clear about that, there is no question. Psalm 53, verse 1, the fool hath said in his heart, there is no God. Now the point here is, who is the author of lies and confusion? What is the European Union collective but confusion? The successive treaties, which are run every 3 or 4 years, are just updated versions, but if you look at them very carefully, and I know this because I worked with Bill Cash in 1992 against the Maastricht Treaty. At the beginning, you know, sort of paragraph 48, little 1, subsection C, you'll see one statement, and then way down 40 pages later, you've got that contradicted. That is the Soviet technique. That was exactly what happened under the Soviet constitution. Rights are given, rights are taken away, and so on and so forth. It's the same. And there is an absolute parallel, because if you walk into the European Parliament, which I had privilege to do because I had a friend who is no longer an MEP, but I was there several times. If you walk in there, you can see you are walking into the Supreme Soviet. It's the same design. All they have to do is to remove the blue stars, or the yellow stars on the blue background, and substitute the hammer and sickle. Now, on the corruption point, you will be aware that the accounts of the European Commission have been specifically disapproved by the EU's own Court of Auditors for the past 14 years running. Okay? So this means that the last time that the European Commission had accounts which could be relied upon, quote unquote, was 15 years ago. Now, I've been running my own private company since 1963. If I produce false accounts, excuse me, I think something very serious happens to me. I'll probably get debarred and I may go to jail. These people have been producing false accounts for the last 14 years and no one is paying any attention. I want to draw your attention to the following reality. In order to correct this matter, they have to go back 15 years and they have to look at every single transaction that took place 14 years ago. They have to identify the fraud or anything that was irregular. They have to have that corrected, however that can be done. They have to have the perpetrators reported to law enforcement, and the law enforcement has to proceed with the appropriate measures. That has to happen 14 years ago. Then when they've corrected the 14th year, they go to the 13th year, and so on and so forth, right the way up to the present. Is that going to happen? No way, Jose, it's never going to happen. Okay? That's obvious. Therefore, the European Commission is a criminal enterprise. Now, I have a new Irish friend who's absolutely delightful called Richard Sharp, with an E. He comes through from Ireland periodically on the way to the continent because he has to drive. And he does odd jobs for me in Europe, and it's very, very convenient. And about 2 months ago, he said, I'll go to the Court of Auditors and I'll look them up. So he literally did a cold call to the Court of Auditors, which is the EU's so-called auditing entity, in Luxembourg. And he got to see a Mr. Giza Novacs, N-O-V-A-C-S. And Mr. Giza Novacs specifically confirmed, and by the way, I'm mentioning his name so that you know I didn't make this up, okay? You can ring him up and he'll have to confirm that what I've just said is accurate. He confirmed that, yes, the European Commission's accounts have not been approved for the past 14 years. The European Commission is a criminal enterprise. Let me introduce my friend who was set up, by the way, Ashley Moat, MEP, who is a close personal friend and is an absolutely delightful man. He stepped down as MEP for South East England in June. And virtually the last thing he did was to go to see the Serious Fraud Office. Now in 2005, he had previously been to see the Serious, I think it may have been 2006, he'd previously been to see the Serious Fraud Office with 2 large files, copies of which I hold. These files contain detailed allegations of criminal fraud committed by at least one enterprise, and I think there are several, which are registered in England and Wales, which did or do business with the European Commission.